Well, hello! Welcome to my YouTube channel or to my podcast, if that's the case. So, português, vou falar em português rapidinho. Sexta-feira, um anúncio bem importante nas minhas redes sociais, então aqui no YouTube, no Instagram, no Twitter também vou falar lá, então qualquer uma que você me segue, preste atenção porque sexta-feira vai ter um anúncio bem importante, sexta e segunda-feira. Outro anúncio importante é, se você gostar desse vídeo, já deixa o seu like, já smash like, subscribe, clica ali no notification bell para que vocês vejam os próximos vídeos se você quiser. E deixa um comentário também falando qual é o próximo tópico que eu posso falar sobre, o que você gostaria de ouvir eu falar, alright? Hoje, mais uma vez, é uma coisa que vai estar inteiramente no podcast, para você só ouvir o áudio se quiser, vou falar inteiramente em inglês. Amanhã eu vou lançar um vídeo de inglês, de ensino mesmo, e aí para aprender alguma coisa de inglês. Hoje é só listening, e eu vou falar sobre o erro principal, so the number one mistake you make when it comes down to reading. O erro principal que você comete quando nós falamos sobre leitura. Alright? So let's start, let's change this to English, and yeah, let's just start. So, the number one mistake you make when you read in English, it's only one mistake really. It's not only when you read in English, it's when you read anything, is that you don't read. That's the one mistake, right? I'm sorry to break it down to you this way. But yeah, that's the one mistake. So, Brazilians read per year. That's an average, okay? So it means that you have people that read a lot more and you have people that read nothing. But per year, so yearly, annually, the Brazilian average reader will read 1.8 non-academic books. So it means outside from what they have to read in school. 1.8. Do you understand what 1.8 books is? I'm not sure if you understand that because it's just nothing, right? It's nothing. And when you think about that, and then you kind of understand. Okay, so that's a big problem. So my idea with this video today and with the audio, if you're just listening to the podcast, is kind of convince you to take the leap and just read more often. At least 12 books a year, at least a book a month. This is nothing. Everyone can read more than that. So I'm going to go ahead and make my case and make that case in favor of books and try to convince you. Now, before we even start this, you all know that I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, and he always says, oh, I have written more books than I have read. And that's fine. I think, guy's a genius. It's not our case. We are not geniuses like he is. We have to be mindful that some people are kind of outside the normal reality of things. So, for us, it would be really good if we could read. Now, keep that in mind. That's just one thing. I don't want people saying that, oh, you like Gary Vaynerchuk. Do you know he doesn't read? And yeah, I know, but the guy's a genius. He has knowledge from other sources. So that's important. And okay, so let's make the case. Why should you read in the first place, okay? Because some people will be like, I don't know, I have other things to do. I don't want to read. So who are you, Teacher Mike? I'm Teacher Mike, by the way, if you don't know me. So who are you to convince me that I should read more? What's your authority? How can you say that, So I'm not, I have no authority. So you don't need to listen to me. You can just close this video right now. But other than that, I have, again, it's not me saying, it's just some things that are basic common sense. But I will try to go with two ways here. I'm going to convince you in a way where you have a goal with reading, which is okay. And there's another perspective, which is you don't have a goal when it comes down to reading. So some people are very finalistic. So that means they always have a goal into things. So, for example, I go to the gym because I want to have a better body so that I can have better girls or better dudes, right? Why not? So that's you have a goal, right? You have a very clear goal. You're not going to the gym for the gym. You're going to the gym because you have a goal. So we're going to get very philosophical here. Some other people maybe just go to the gym because of the process of enjoying going to the gym, and and they have the bonus of then having a nicer body, thus having nicer guys or girls, right? So here you have someone that has a very clear goal, and someone that doesn't have very a goal. Like, it's not, they don't have a finalistic approach or why as to why are they doing something, but they just kind of do it. So I'm going to try to argue using both perspectives here when it comes down to reading. So let's go and start with this one, which is, okay, let's have a goal. Why should you read? Why is it important to read? Well, first of all, vocabulary. The more you read, the more words you are going to be introduced to, and as you read more often, those words will eventually become part of your vocabulary, and then you will eventually be able to use them. So that's just number one. If you're reading in English, and even in Portuguese, because you are going to be introduced to new words, and you're going to be able to use them in Portuguese as well, or whatever language it is. Like, it doesn't really matter. I'm just talking about reading here. So you could be reading in Spanish, Portuguese, I don't know, like other languages, German, if you can do that, right? So vocabulary, that's the one. So having a goal. All right, so my goal is that I want to be better at expressing myself, so I want to have more vocabulary. Therefore, if I read more, I will have more vocabulary. That's just one goal, very quickly. Second goal, on average, more successful people, like, if you go into the higher ranks of money, even, like millionaires, billionaires, most of them read like crazy motherfuckers, right? Most of them read all the time. So that's one thing. You kind of look at there's a trend there. A lot of people, most of them, that have reached a very interesting amount of success in society are readers. They read. That's one. So you have already two reasons as to why should you read. Number three, and I love this one, which is probably one of the reasons that I really think it's the one that's most convincing to myself. You learn a lot by yourself when you read books, and especially books that are, maybe less fiction and more, let's say, into the realm of philosophy or science, political science, whatnot. And this happened to me very recently when I was reading Viktor Frankl. It's like, this is 100% one of my favorite books ever. And it's a book about suffering, about being responsible, about bearing the suffering of life. So the book's separated into two parts. But to me, it's really interesting that, to me, one of the most important parts of the book was the part about, finding meaning in your life because of the love you have for other people. So especially the one person that finds meaning in your life, right? So it was a small part of the book. The thing about, so the book's called Man's Search for Meaning, and it talks about meaning at all, like in life, meaning in life. And love is like, let's say it's within 3 or 4 pages there in the book out of the 200 something. So that part became really interesting to me, and I got really focused in that. So I was learning a lot about myself. Like, when that happens, I know that, okay, so that's the way I am reading the book. That's the way I'm receiving that information. So I think it's super nice. Probably 200 people can read a book, and they will have different perspectives on it. They shouldn't have different, they shouldn't understand things differently, right? Because if you, like, there's one thing that you have to, like, the book has an idea, you have to understand it, but you can have a different perspective on the book, and that's fine, and I think that's super nice. So let's just kind of remember very quickly here. Number one, you just learn more words. That's good. Number two, more the successful people in society tend to be good readers. Number three, you learn a lot about yourself as well. So I have already given you here 3 very valuable reasons to read more. Okay, so that should be enough. If that's not enough, I don't know, don't read then, but you should. Okay, that should be enough. Now let's go to actually, that's fine. Here's another one. Fourth reason. Usually, books are a compilation of knowledge from someone, right? So here, I'll give you an example. Let me grab this one here. So this book here is called Grit. I have read this book kind of a while ago, right? So this book's about how can I explain this very so this book's about the research that this girl has made, Angela Duckworth, and she's made a research about why some people remain doing the things and they have this thing called grit, so that she calls grit. How come some people have perseverance and they can persevere into the things they're doing, and how come some other people just give up on their things. So see, this is a research that's made, and she's from Harvard. She's a PhD, I think. So this is a research that took time to prepare. She took probably more than 1 year writing the book. So this, when you read this, it's the same thing as like sitting down with Angela and being like, tell me about your research. How valid, like, this is worth way more than $25 that I paid for it, because it's like sitting down with a PhD in psychology from Harvard and asking, tell me about what you know, right? So how can you not, I don't understand, like, how can you not read, right? And I don't think people really put that into perspective. It's like, so when I read 12 Rules for Life from Peterson, it's like, Peterson, tell me how to live. And it's going to be like, well, okay, that's rule 1. That's rule 2. So it's the same thing as sitting down and talking with someone. You can't ask questions, but if a book is well thought out and well written, everything's kind of gonna be in there. So, oh man, you should be reading by now. Like I should have convinced you. No, okay. So if I have failed in my task to make you buy a book like right now and read, let's go to the other approach. So it's not the one that you have a goal and a reason as to why to read, but to the one that is the intrinsic value of reading. So when you read, there's one thing is happening is knowledge. You're acquiring knowledge into something. Anything, any type of book. It can be even those books. I have some here that are. So this one here. This one became a movie quite recently. This is It. I'm not sure if it's gonna focus, but let's try. This is It by Stephen King. Great book. It became a movie quite recently. So this book, it's not psychology. It's not political science. It's not philosophy. It's not like knowledge of society or something. It's just a story, right? It's a great story. And this story tells a lot about the human psychology. It tells a lot about how people act, how people think. It talks about fears. So it's knowledge by itself. You can use some good quotes in here to talk about, a lot of things in your life. So another book that I have here that's really good. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know where it is. Maybe I lent it to someone. See, that's a problem. Sometimes you just give books to people and you don't remember to grab it back. Stephen King. Yeah. So I don't know what it is, but the book's called The Green Mile. It's also by Stephen King. Where is it? Where is this book? It's should be here. All right. Anyways, so it's the same book. And it's the same author, and it's about the prisoner and his there's a whole story. I'm going to tell the story, but the thing is, there's a quote there that I love, which is about embracing the movement of life and just going with it instead of like complaining that everything moves too fast and then just being everything's difficult. So it's a story about it's a story about being sent to death and quite unfairly, in fact. And then you're going to read about the thing. Has a bit of magic or miracle into the book. It's a very beautiful, you could say, that story. But you also have that part where it kind of teaches you some type of lesson where it's like, okay, you shouldn't complain about the way things are. You should just roll with it, right? So yeah, so this is knowledge by itself. It's like, okay, I'm learning, and I'm not going to do anything specific with it. I'm not going to become rich or make money out of it, but I'm just going to embrace the fact that I learned something new. So that's it. And then there you go, right? This should be enough. This should be enough of reasons to make you read something. Okay? Just read something. Anything. It doesn't need to be a very hard book. You don't need to be reading Aristotle, right? So those of you who don't know, if you want to say Aristoteles in English, you say Aristotle. But this book is in Portuguese, actually. You don't need to be reading those things, which I think it's fair. I read all sorts of stuff. I have a lot of stupid books here, right? So yeah, just read something. That's the thing. That's the goal of this book, this video. Just make you our podcast. Just read something, anything, right? Let's start with this today. Try to read 12 books a year, which is once a month. You have the time for that. You don't even try and say and tell me that you don't have the time for this, because you do. You just do, right? So you can't fool me, really. Yeah. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Smash like if you read books, and smash like if you don't, but you're going to. Comment. Tell me a book you've read. I want to know, really. Tell me what's a good book you've read. Tell me in the comments. I want to know if there's a book that I haven't read yet that I should read. Let me know. And if you're watching the video, share it to a friend that needs to read, needs to practice his listening skills, so he can do that with this video right now. If you are listening to the podcast, share with your friend and your mom. I don't know. It can be your dad as well. Yeah.